Hey everyone. So a lot of people say blasphemy has been termed the unforgivable sin. So according to Mark chapter 3 verse 29, but whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven, but is guilty of an eternal sin. So like I can think of like a dozen worse things than blasphemy, and I bet you can too. And apparently God can forgive abusers, murderers, slave owners, thieves, and anyone else, but he draws the line at blasphemers. So I think that's stupid. Maybe you do too. But if this makes sense to you, please call into the show because it is starting right now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Heathen. It is Sunday, August 20th, 2023. I am your host today, Objectively Dan, and joining me in the co-pilot seat this time is Richard. Richard, what's happening?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to do this again with you, Dan. After last week, we had a great show last week.
I thought last week was pretty fun, and I'm excited for round two. So bear with us, folks, because I'm going to tell you about what this show is all about. It's Talk Heathen. It's a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And if this is your first time watching, you should know Talk Heathen is a live call-in show. It happens every week, and we have live lines. So you can get your calls in right now at 512 991-9242, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/call-th. And we have open lines right now, so you should definitely get your calls in so we can actually, make this a real call-in show. Because otherwise, it's just going to be me and Richard talking for like an hour and a half, which I guess we could do, but like, kind of, I don't know. That's not what people expect from this. So get your calls in. Before we do get to any calls, though, we have our Talk Heathen to Me segment, Richard. Last week, we asked, you are in hell, and who is your roommate? I was excited to see what the answers to this one would be. And I think there's some pretty good ones here. So let's read our top three answers from last week. Number 3 is from Mr. Colby II, who says, my roommate is Eddie Van Halen, and Turn It Up to 11 would be 10 times better than listening to hymns all day and night in heaven, which is true. I mean, like, it seems like all the cool people do go to hell. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Richard? Do you think that's
Yeah, I
true?
think it'd be more interesting having Steve Vai, though, because he did the guitar work for the film Crossroad, which was all about the devil, someone selling the soul to the devil to become a great guitar player. So I'd personally choose Steve Vai over Eddie Van Halen, but great answer.
Yeah, you always make deals with the devil. Can we make deals with God? Is that a thing too? I don't know. Is there some sort of exchange that could be made? I don't know. That's for theologians to decide. But number 2 comes from Diana Bender, who says, I am in hell and my roommate is Mother Teresa. Ooh, that would be really bad to have Mother Teresa as a roommate. She'd probably be very like she'd probably just like curse you out if you did anything that she didn't like. She'd probably like be really mad at stuff. I don't know. Probably wouldn't be a fun time.
Yeah, especially if you were ill, she'd just encourage you to embrace your
Yeah.
suffering rather than
Oh,
giving you medicine.
that's a good point. If she saw you burning, she's like, you just need to embrace it. It's like a good thing. And I would be like, no, that's not true. I need a Tylenol, at least, if I'm burning. Probably need more, but at least that. Number 1 comment, though, comes from RC Blazer, who says, nobody tell God, but I am deathly afraid of Audrey Hepburn being my roommate in hell. Which is like really great. Like, oh no, not Audrey Hepburn, anybody but her. Like, yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah. But yeah, those are some great answers. Thank you guys so much for commenting on our segment. This week's prompt is going to be headline a Bible story using Florida Man. I'm gonna be honest, this may be like one of the top 5 best prompts we've done. We need really good answers from you guys. Okay, so headline a story using Florida Man in your comment this week, and we might read it out for next week and pick the top 3 answers. Do you have a good headline for this prompt?
I think Florida Man in Exodus would be.
Yeah.
I just had this image of God and Moses doing all the hard work, freeing everybody from slavery, getting them out of Egypt, getting to the border of Egypt and Florida man just saying, no, we're going to build a wall. You can't come in. You've got to stay in Egypt and remain slaves.
Well, yeah, I think it's something I was thinking like maybe the story of Samson or something like Florida man breaks down local buildings after hair growth or something, something like that. But yeah, I want to hear your guys' comments on that. So let us know what you think. And hey, Richard, guess what?
What? Go on.
I have a new toy that I've been playing with here. I got a little voice
You should have
modification.
mentioned it, Dan.
Listen. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to use it today, but I have been playing with this little voice modifier thing, and it is pretty funny. I'm not going to do the sound effects because the sound effects, I'm not sure about like how the copyright stuff works yet, but I may pull out some of these other voice things. Like check this out here.
What's this? Boo. Like, this one's called the narrator. What I did the whole kill the boo.
A little choppy there. Maybe it's a work in progress. I got to fix on this thing, but in the future you may see more of this. I'm experimenting with some of these. Ooh, maybe this one will
work. This is like a helium one. Ooh, there we go. This is one I could do, like the whole show.
Not really though. That'd be really annoying. Anyway, so yeah, I got some voice stuff. If you guys have ideas for voices I could do, maybe I'll invest in using this in the future. But hey, it's time to get to some calls. Richard, you ready to talk to some people?
Always.
All right,
ready.
let's do it. We have our first call here coming from Cass, who's calling in from Canada. Cass, you are live on Talk Heathen. What's going on?
Hey, nothing much. How are you guys?
Doing
Great. How are you?
solid. How can we help you?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of wanted to talk about the topic of like death and the idea of afterlife, just because, I mean, this is something I've been thinking about my whole life, growing up very religious, and especially the past few months since my mom passed away. And it's just like, it's a great idea to think about an afterlife, you know, but it's also just not something I have enough evidence to believe in. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious about what you guys think about it, and like kind of where you guys come from an atheist standpoint.
Yeah, Richard, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, kind of. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss. I myself have lost both of my parents and all of my grandparents. So yeah, I've been through the kind of the death thing a little bit myself as well. I've never been religious, so have never had that kind of perspective of coming out of religion, or kind of having that difference of opinion between being a religious person and believing in an afterlife, and not being a religious person and not believing in it, but still having those kind of remnants of belief to it. It's interesting for me, the kind of the perspective from that angle. From me personally, I've never believed in an afterlife. I've studied religion from lots of different cultures. There are lots of different beliefs about the afterlife, and lots of different ways of dealing with both an afterlife and kind of death itself. And some of them are entirely climate related, which I think is really, really interesting. You know how you dispose of bodies in the Himalaya, where you're high up and everything's frozen. You can't bury bodies up there, is entirely different to how you would do it in a kind of temperate climate. And that all plays in to kind of belief about the afterlife as well. There's lots of ways of looking at it. For me personally, it's interesting to look at it kind of academically, but there's an emotional aspect to it as well. And I'm interested in your kind of when you said you don't have evidence for it, because this kind of suggested to me that there's this internal struggle going on where you've got a remnant of belief, and although you kind of understand from the kind of from the logical point of view that there's no good reason to believe it, that you might still be clinging to a little bit of your former belief about an afterlife. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I feel like you really like nailed the whatever that term is. Sorry, I'm a little.
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And I think in such situations, it's, you know, we could talk about well, there's no good reason to believe it till the cows come home, and it will make no difference. You know, it's you're still going to be in a process of grieving, and you've got to kind of work through that, and it's going to be a personal thing. I think you know, the reason I suggested these different cultures and things is for me the kind of the best kind of suggestion I've got for you, because you're still clinging to a particular view from a particular tradition on an afterlife, is go and kind of have a look at all the different afterlives. So rather than trying to tell yourself, you know, well, it makes no sense to believe in an afterlife because there's no evidence for it, just go and look at how many different kinds of beliefs there are about afterlives. And I think that will internally give you an understanding rather than trying to reason your way out of it, which doesn't always work, especially when you've got a huge emotional kind of baggage to go with that. Rather than trying to reason your way out of it, just kind of look at all the different ideas there are about it across the board. And I think that will be more helpful than somebody saying to you, well, you've just got to think your way out of it, because, you know, it doesn't make sense to believe in it. Dan?
No, I think what you're saying is true. So I was a former Christian. I've been a non-believer for over half a decade now. I don't know how long it's been, a little over half a decade. So I think, Cass, if most of us were honest with ourselves, especially those of us who were former Christians, we recognize that a lot of people, one of the reasons why they believe is because they think some philosophical proposition is true, or they think, oh, this historical evidence or the scientific evidence is really great and pointing towards a God belief. They want to believe in an afterlife. Like, I think an afterlife is a core part of it. And that's not just for Christians, by the way, that's for most of human history, right? Like, how many religions talk about what happens after death, right? I think it's most of them. Not all of them, certainly, but there's a lot of them that do. And that's because there is something about the human psychology that wants to keep going, right? And wants to be able to see our loved ones after they pass. That says, oh, well, they're okay. They're just in a different place than they are now. But the truth is, as of course you recognize, is that our consciousness is probably tied towards our physical beings, right? And so when our physical self expires, so does everything else about us. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. It's a pill that most people don't want to swallow. So we kind of suppress that a little bit. And the fact that you're having this sort of dissonance, even though like you don't believe in a bunch of other stuff, points to how hard it is to dissuade yourself of this kind of belief. It really is sort of a psychological phenomenon, but it's also a thing that you just have to deal with like everybody else, right? Like, we all kind of have to grieve. We all kind of have to go through with this. In my opinion, though, it's more honest to be able to say, well, this person was with us now and now isn't, and we can move on with our lives and recognize the impact that they've had in our lives. It makes our relationships with people, in my opinion, even more meaningful. Because if I say, oh, well, I know my grandmother's sick right now, but I'm not going to visit her. I'm just going to wait till the afterlife comes and maybe I'll see her then. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but we do kind of not take as much stock into human life in that regard. I mean, there's a lot of people that do really think, well, there's the bad things happening now, but people are going to a better place. It is how like awful things like war are justified in some people's minds. So in one sense, it's terrible because we don't get to see the people that we love anymore. But in another sense, it does give us a sense of beauty because it lets us know that the relationships and impacts that people had in our lives were real and we're lost. And I think it's that loss that sometimes gives us the value that they had in the first place. I don't know, just a perspective, but there's a million answers to this question. The only one that's going to work for you is the one that works for you. And that's something you got to figure out for yourself. But hopefully that's helpful, Cass. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just, it's kind of like the hard part for me is that it's almost like I'm still kind of holding on to like a little bit of hope that there's an afterlife. Like, I'm okay with like the idea that like you die and that's it. Like there's nothing else. I'm okay with that idea, but there's still that just like that little piece of me that's just like, well, I guess it would be a nice thing if there was something after, like something that we cannot imagine or we don't know. You know, it's just kind of like the idea of it is still kind of like nice to think about. And it's just, it's hard because it's like, is that helpful for me or is that making it worse? Like, is it easier for me to just throw out every hope and just move on as if, you know, there's nothing that's going to happen after? Or is it helpful for me to at least hold on to some hope because maybe that'll give me some motivation or happiness? Like, I don't know where to kind of like draw that line because obviously, like how you guys said too, like some people who are really religious, they kind of like, they believe so much in an afterlife that they don't, you know, live this life to the fullest because they just think, okay, I'll see you in the next life in whatever. So it's like, I don't want to live that way, but I also kind of, it's almost like I like the hope that, you know, maybe there is something more to the life that we're living now. But I also just don't want to completely not live the life I have now at the same time. So it's kind of just like drawing a balance.
Yeah. The fact that you're cognizant of that, I think, is a good sign, right? Because it's like you understand that, that's an excuse people use not to like take care of their own health, right? I've definitely heard that from people. They just say, well, it doesn't matter. This life is temporary, right? You understand that that's BS. You understand that's something people say to make themselves feel better. That's good. I think that's the healthiest place you can be. If the thought that an afterlife at least gives you some kind of peace, or at least maybe the fact that, I mean, because like we don't know, honestly, right? Like we don't know. There very much could be. I think it's very unlikely, but that's one of those questions where it's like, yeah, I just don't think it's true, but I can never possibly 100% know for sure. I just wouldn't know what that would mean. I guess where I'm getting at here is a loose kind of belief like that is going to be way less problematic than one that's sort of stitched into a hierarchy of other beliefs. And what I'm really talking about here is Christianity, right? Because I'm assuming you come from a Christian background, right? The Christian sort of, right?
Yeah, I grew up
there's
like very fundamental, like Pentecostal religion. That's kind of I grew up.
There's a whole lot of implications that come with like that Christian sort of understanding of the afterlife, and I don't think that's where your brain is at, right? I'm just anticipating the comment section here because I don't want them to be like, oh, you shouldn't tell people to believe in delusions. I'm not. It's natural to think that there could be an afterlife. I say it's natural because billions of people believe it. Like that's just the thing. That's part of humanity. Whether or not we can control that or whether or not we find it convincing, that's going to be up to people's psychology, people's understanding of evidence, people's understanding of philosophy, people's understanding of life. So I say, if it's helpful for you and it's not going to be a bother in any other sense of your life, have hope. But I also strongly suggest, which you already do, understanding and being cognizant of the fact that this probably is the only life we have. And so the relationships you have with people and the things for yourself, like you should be building and investing it for yourself in, right? Like you shouldn't just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to donate all of my life to doing this thing for other people because I can't, that I'll get treasures in heaven if I do this, right? Like that's not going to be helpful for you. But if you say, hey, I'm going to give my time for people because I want to help other people out, it makes me feel good. And also, I think that's one of the best things a human being can do. I mean, that's doing the same thing, but with a different perspective, right? It really is about that perspective, like how healthy of a perspective that is. And I think what you're describing sounds natural and totally fine, honestly. I don't know. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, I agree. And I think I just want to say a couple of things on the kind of hope thing. First of all, I would absolutely love there to be a place where I could be reunited with, my loved ones who've passed on. I think it'd be brilliant. I kind of hope that's the case as well. Without having any, I've never been religious. I've never held that belief, but it is a nice idea. And if you can use that as and I think that as well, even though I've never believed in it, I still, you know, I can think about it and say to myself, that would be a really, really great thing without having any belief that it is true or that it will happen whatsoever. You can still use it as a tool to kind of help you, you know, face this emotional stress you're going through. I still think about that. You know, my father died 11 years ago. And I still think about that. My mum's died at the start of last year, and I still think, wouldn't it be nice if there was a place where we could be together again with the full kind of acceptance that there isn't? And I think it's, as Dan said, it's a perfectly natural thing to do. I think it's also worth kind of noting that religions have and do exploit this hope tremendously. And you know, I think there's I can't speak for all of them. I'm not saying that they're all like utterly dishonest, because I don't think they are all utterly dishonest. But there are some religions, and certainly some kind of schools of religion, certain churches, certain preachers, certain pastors that will exploit this and use this to take advantage of people. And being aware that you know, this is a natural thing that people go through, and be aware that people do use this as an exploitative tool.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important just to keep in the back of your mind as well. But yeah, I'm on the same, absolutely on the same page as Dan with this. You know, it's a natural part of the grieving process, and there is no harm in it. There is no harm in having those thoughts. Wouldn't it be nice if I could be with my loved ones again?
Yeah. I think that's all we have to say on this, Cass. Hopefully that was helpful. Any other comments before we let you go?
No, that was very helpful. It's helpful to, you know, talk about it with like-minded people. I just like had this fear that, you know, if I think this way, like, am I like progressing in like logical thinking, or am I like being held back by like this fundamental belief that like I've been taught my whole life? So
Yeah.
it's helpful to know that like you guys too, as atheists and logical thinkers, like also, you know, have a hope, because it would be nice, you know.
100%. Cass, you have
yeah,
my
it's
permission to
like-
be irrational on this belief.
Yeah.
Okay, here I have granted you high authority from the atheist community of Austin on high, and I've said yes, you're allowed to have this because you're a human being and you deserve dignity and respect, and to be able to grieve for your loved ones. Yeah, 100%. So if that's what you're looking for, I'll give that to you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Very helpful.
Of course. Thank you for calling in, Cass. What a nice call. Of course, circumstances not being nice, but just like I like this perspective of, hey, I think of myself as a logical thinker, and I want to think logically about this. Is it okay that I'm not thinking logically about this? Like,
I think it's brilliant. I think
Yeah.
there's so many people kind of in our community who try and kind of make Vulcans out of themselves and
Yeah.
disassociate themselves from emotion, and you can't do that. We
Yeah.
are emotional creatures, and we can understand logic, and we can understand kind of skepticism in practice, but we are still emotional, and we've still got that aspect of ourselves to deal with. And it's great to keep a sight on ourselves, as
Yeah.
well as talking to other people about skepticism. We need to view it internally as well.
This is a problem that the atheist community faces at large. They really do think of a lot of people as like Vulcans, and this idea of like, oh, am I allowed to be irrational about this? Like, it's almost like there's going to be consequences if you aren't. And beliefs are important, right? I'm not saying like beliefs don't have consequences. They certainly do. But there's nothing about, at least from what Cass is describing about their situation, in saying, oh, this is going to lead to something that's problematic, right? They're not saying, oh, I think there might be hope for heaven, so I'm going to donate all my money to this psychic who can tell me about talking to my mother through phenomenon and stuff. It's nothing like that. It's more just like, I hope I get to see this person again. And if that's the extent of it, yeah, why would I take that away from somebody? Why? Because I think I'm better than them, and I think, oh, no, actually, you're never going to see this person again. I mean, how shitty is that, right? There's no reason for that. So
And I don't think it in itself it's an illogical viewpoint anyway, having that
Yeah.
hope. You're not saying you think it's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
You just want to see someone you love and who's had a great amount of importance in your life again. I think that's absolutely acceptable.
Yeah, it's true. Let's go ahead and take some other callers, but before we do, just a reminder, this Saturday, this Saturday, I've had a debate with people about whether you can say next Saturday, if it's the upcoming Saturday, or if it's the Saturday after, and it's stupid. But anyway, August 26th, specifically, is what I mean, this year, is the Back Cruise. If you guys are tired of hearing us announce it, don't worry. It's going to happen really soon. So tickets have sold out, but there is a chance you can still join us if you join the wait list. So sign up for that in case there are cancellations, and join the wait list at tiny.cc/backers. And hey, if you bought tickets and you can't come, please go ahead and cancel so that somebody else can come, because there's a lot of people on the list already, and we want to make sure as many people can come as they can. So if you know, hey, I got these tickets and I can't actually go, please go ahead and cancel. There's a lot of people that don't do that, and then they end up, there's not as many people that can come. So if you do have your tickets, look forward to going on the boat and also enjoying conversations with all the other folks that are going to be there: Forrest Valkai, J Mike, Christy Powell, and lots of other hosts from other shows. So check it out. One more thing as well, just as we're talking about supporting the ACA, hey, we've got a shirt this month. It is Satan, the lesser of two evils, on there, which is very edgy. If you're into that, you can get that, and of course all the other Talk Heathen merch at tiny.cc/merchaca right now. I of course have to remind you, please like, subscribe, and enable notifications if you like this show, and you should become a member by clicking the join button below the video. You get custom chat emotes, and you help perpetuate the mission. That word perpetuate is always hard. Perpetuate the mission of the Talk Heathen community and the atheist community of Austin. One more thing. If you send a super chat today, you can have it be read out loud, whether it's a question or a comment. We're going to read as many as we can, and the crew is going to let us know when you send that in. So if we don't answer it within like 2 minutes, don't worry. We will get to it before the end of the show, and we will read all super chats that get sent to us as long as they're YouTube appropriate. And that's it. That's all I got. Let's go ahead and move on to our next caller. Let's see. Let's talk to Tim. Tim, who's calling in from Washington. Tim, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Hey, it's the weekend. Well, it's the end of the weekend for me, but anyway, so I wanted to talk about nihilism a little bit, if that's okay. And it's sort of related, I guess, to the last call.
Everybody's asking permission today. Yeah, live your lives today, folks. Yeah, absolutely. Talk about nihilism.
My boyfriend and I were out yesterday, and we were talking, and this subject came up, and I thought I have been thinking about this for several months. Nihilism isn't necessarily a negative philosophy. It's not about, oh my God, there's nothing to this whole thing, and we're all just kind of existing or anything like that. It's sort of all about, you get to live your life, period. And it really goes to show the type of person you are. If you're a good person and you believe that after death there is nothing, and you really believe that there is no heaven nor hell, or you really believe that we aren't put here for a specific reason because God, Odin, Ra, any of these gods have just placed us here. We are simply here because we happen to exist on a planet that was perfect for us to evolve into what we are. And it really shows what kind of a person you are if you believe that there is nothing in the future, nothing after death. and you're still a good person, and you're not being forced to be a good person because the 10 Commandments are telling you to be.
Sure. Yeah, nihilism is complicated because it's been interpreted by different people to mean different things, right? So like nihilism, first of all, there's different kinds of nihilism. You can talk about like metaphysical nihilism or like mereological nihilism, but most people when they're talking about nihilism, they're talking about what's been described by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Who talks about nihilism in several of his books, but it's not a prescriptive sort of ideology. Really, it's more a description of the times. Nietzsche was worried. He was worried about a post-Christian world, basically. He's the one. If you ever heard like God is dead and we have killed him, that's Friedrich Nietzsche. He said that, and basically he's like, look, what are we going to do about living in this world that has no sense of objective values, right? Where everybody is kind of coming up with his own meaning. And he is actually very positive in his affirmation. He says, look, we have to make meaning for ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of people that misinterpret his work because they just heard about it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, he's saying everything is all meaningless. He's like, yes, but he's not saying that's it. He's saying, and so because of that, human beings have to kind of do things, right? And of course, other writers have talked about this too. But
Right.
Nietzsche's like the guy that people talk about with this. And yeah, like people who are very serious about the concept of existential nihilism, this idea that nothing matters, they're the first ones to say, yeah, we have to like kind of come up with our own stuff here. And that's been interpreted in different ways. Albert Camus talks about the myth of Sisyphus coming up with absurdism, and then and Jack Derrida and all these other folks the rest of the 20th century like kind of talk about this. But anybody who's never actually read any of that stuff is just like, oh yeah, all these atheists, they say that there's just no meaning to life and we just gotta all die. What's the point of living? Like that's just really not what any of them have to say about it. And it's a little more complicated. But you're right, there are more positive interpretations of it that are out there. Richard, what do you got?
Yeah, I've not really looked into nihilism, however you want to say it, very much. I think I wrote an essay about it on Nietzsche and his kind of is the way that Buddhism influenced his philosophy and how people misunderstood Buddhism at the time that he was around and kind of saw that as a nihilistic philosophy, which it isn't. And I kind of did an essay about that a while ago, but it's not. Other than that, it's not actually something I've looked much into. I think we get in this community, we get it thrown at us a lot by Christians and other religious people who kind of say, well, if you don't have something to believe in, you obviously believe in nothing. Therefore, you're nihilist. And I just simply don't think that's the case. I don't think there's a definite difference for me between skepticism and nihilism. And, I think that's important to point out. But other than that, I've really not got much to contribute.
Yeah, but what you're saying is important, because even if there isn't an objective reason for living, an objective value, an objective morality, I mean, so what, right? That's not stopping people from living. I didn't like the things that I liked when I was 5 because they were objectively good. I liked them because I just thought they were cool, right? And it's the same thing for everything I like today. I'm just more grown about it, and I like to have more complicated reasons. But I don't know. It's like you like what you like, and most of us are pretty pragmatic about it. So a lot of the things we like are pragmatic and happen to help us, but that doesn't mean that they're objective just because they appear to be universal. I guarantee what a lot of people think are universal values really aren't, right? But anyway, Tim, what you had sound like you had more to say.
Well, I was also telling him yesterday when we were talking that when I was a Mormon and a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian and all of that, I was so afraid of death. I was so afraid of fucking my life up, somehow doing something wrong, that God is going to send me to hell because I would misstep. And with nihilism, or the nihilistic thinking of not really having to look toward an actual afterlife, just no longer existing after this body fails, I'm no longer really afraid of death. I'm no longer really afraid to live my life and make mistakes along the way, and you know, and yet I can also be such an incredible person because I'm not told I have to be an incredible person. I can be this incredible person just because that's the humane thing to do. It's, you know, it's not,
Yeah.
I guess, a superior thing. It is just a humane thing to be a
Sure.
good person.
Sure.
And that's what I love about kind of thinking about, that's what I love about nihilism, or at least my idea of what nihilism is, because I don't have to live by any set standard. I just have to live by decent human thought, and, you know, making sure that I am being the best person I can, however that may look.
Yeah.
You know,
100%, Tim. Totally agree with you. Yeah, it's again, it's one of those things where some people, they look at that and they don't find empowerment at all, and they think it's defeating. I definitely thought that when I was a Christian, and then I realized, well, Christianity can also be interpreted in extremely nihilist ways, if you just have the right language for it, if you have the right mindset for it. Look at what God wants for us. We are God is our master, and we're essentially his puppets, and we just have to follow the will of God. And if we refuse to follow the will of God, we are rejected, and we are sent to hell, and we are to burn for eternity for expressing the free will that he gave us. What exactly is positive about that message in that light? You know, there's lots of ways you can.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So if we're talking purely in terms of positive and negative worldviews, right, you can easily construe the Christian worldview to be extremely negative. And yeah, can nihilism be interpreted in a negative way and still be legitimate to its like fundamental sort of interpretations? Like, yeah, I think you can, but it can also be interpreted in a positive way. I mean, really, that's kind of the whole point. It's like it's really up to what philosophers have made of it, and how to solve the human condition, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, especially in a world that is probably going to be slowly rejecting Christianity over time, or at least reinterpreting it to fit more modern secular conventions. So anyway, yeah, that's all I got. Richard, anything else?
Now, I think we just need to get rid of this kind of idea that nihilism is people walking around going, "Woe is me!
Yeah,
everything is worthless," because it's just simply not the case.
Yeah.
It's a very narrow, very marginalized view of what it is.
Yeah, 100%. Tim, anything else before we let you go?
No, I think that's all I wanted. I just, like I said, I was talking with my boyfriend yesterday and was thinking, oh crap, I want to talk about this to somebody who actually will understand what I'm saying. And you not only understood it, but you actually explained a couple of things to me that I didn't know. So that's cool.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you want to read the books, I can't remember if it's The Gay Science where he talks about it, or if it's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, but he talks about it, and honestly, Arthur Schopenhauer and stuff talks about it before, but like Nietzsche's kind of the guy. If you want to talk about this stuff in depth, he's very interesting on that. But Tim, thanks again for calling in, and always appreciate it when you do call in. It is always lovely talking to you, and a good conversation. And nihilism is probably one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted ideas in philosophy, maybe more than anything else. I really can't think of anything else that's more misinterpreted. Can you? I mean, it's really just, I don't know.
Atheism.
Yeah, everybody. That's true, but yeah, I guess that's fair. Everybody just has their own ideas of what nihilism is, and it's complicated. Like it's one thing, like many things in philosophy. It doesn't have just one definition, but it's also like going to have various, much more thought out ideas than what you might imagine if you actually take the time to read stuff. but most people don't. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But hey,
Go out and read philosophy, people. It's important.
yeah, and I'm not. And by the way, I don't have a philosophy degree or anything. I'm just a lay person, so I could be 100% wrong, and some philosophy PhD is going to be like,
My degree is in philosophy, and you explained it far better than I could have done.
Okay,
so.
well there you go. I just you can figure this stuff out by Google searches. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't take. It's not that hard, but it is for some people. But hey, I have to move on here and talk about a Patreon, as we have kind of mentioned some ideas on supporting us. The Patreon is one of them, and we will be reading those top 5 patrons at the turn of the hour. We also have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. I almost said audio podcast form, which sounds kind of cool. That sounds like a rap album that I would buy. Audio podcast form. You can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for that. You can also become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan run Facebook page. It's at tiny.cc/FBTHG. And if you do join that, please don't be a dick. There's a lot of people that join and post nasty things. And all the hosts are kind of looking. We are always seeing what you got to say. All right. You guys said some funny things on there sometimes. I will say that. And lastly here, before I move on, if you didn't know, Talk Heathen does have a TikTok and does go live before the shows on Sunday. Richard just went live today. So go subscribe and join the pre-show on the Talk Heathen TikTok. Richard, how was that today, by the way?
It was great. We had we had what we sometimes get, and it's not always the case. We sometimes get people who will put their money where their mouth is. But today we had a lot of people who were making a lot of claims, and when asked to call in, said, "No, I'm not going to do that." You know, it's one thing to write something, to make a statement in a comment section. It's an entirely different thing to have a conversation about it and talk it through.
Right.
And I've said this many, many times. If you're going to just make a statement and you're not willing to have the conversation, this tells me that you're not convinced that the statement you're making, you actually have evidence for. And
Richard
put your money where your mouth is.
Richard says, "Come meet me in the ring, boy.
Yes.
Come in, come at me." Richard's starting fights on TikTok over here, and keep that energy, Richard. That's good. No. I know what you mean though. It's like people, you can say whatever you want in a comment section anywhere. It's just like, yeah, but why not have a conversation about it? If you truly believe that's something you think is true, right? Why not defend that? I don't know. That's what I think is interesting to some people. But hey, remember last week whenever we had a conversation about veganism? Remember that, Richard?
Did.
Okay, well, we have another caller who wants to talk in the same lieu here. So maybe this will be a sequel to our conversation last week. Maybe part 2, maybe not though. This is Julie, who's calling in from New Mexico. Julie, what did you want to talk to us about today?
I wanted to talk about how veganism can actually reduce overall violence in the world.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me more.
Well, just if people accept the violence against animals in order to eat them, and I just think that if we stop normalizing the killing of animals, then it would eventually lead to less violence within humans.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. First of all, as you know, I'm a vegan. I'm sympathetic to the vegan worldview, right? So I'm pro what you say in the sense that humans' tendencies towards animals, right? How they view animals can be reflective of how they view other people, right? Mahatma Gandhi talked about this concept, right? He was like, look, if you want to see if a nation is civilized, see how they treat their animals, right? I'm paraphrasing. He didn't exactly say it right there, but this was this same idea, right? It's this idea of look, we know that animals are quote unquote lesser beings than us in some way, right? Maybe they don't have the same rational capacities. Maybe they don't have the same intellectual or abilities otherwise. So how we treat them, how we treat the lesser of animals can be reflective of how we treat the lessers of people, or what we consider lessers within human populations, right? Obviously the idea of seeing somebody, yeah. And the idea of seeing somebody as a lesser is of course problematic within itself, But how many times has that happened in human history, right? How many times have people had this concept and has done terrible things? So in principle, I think you're right. Now that being said, I have met other vegans and seen other vegans who are just as violent in other ways. Maybe just verbally. Maybe they're not killing animals, but you know what I mean. It can vary a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think I think the idea is nice. I think I like it in principle. Does it work in practice? I'm not sure, but yeah, I do agree though, right? I mean, as a whole, if the world was more vegan, ostensibly we would be a less violent world because animals would not be on the receiving end of violence, or at least it would be scaled down to a significant degree, right? They would still occur, obviously. But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just kind of reduce the thought of violence even.
Sure. Yeah, and we do have very violent
okay
tendencies
to
towards
kill 'em.
animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
violent
We
cultural
do.
tendencies. I do agree with that. Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. I overall agree that reducing violence across the board is a good idea. I'm not sure how. I think it's a nice idea that if everyone became vegan, it would reduce violence between human to human violence. I'm not sure it works in practicality.
Yeah.
If you have a look at, I mean, the idea that Dan touched on from Mahatma Gandhi, who was a vegan, is and the kind of the thing that non-violence in that tradition is called ahimsa, and it's also held in Tibetan Buddhism. Now, in Tibetan Buddhism, it could be argued that there is less violence than in the tradition that Mahatma Gandhi comes from. However, because of where they live and the practical aspects of that, a lot of Tibetan Buddhists do eat meat.
Yeah.
So I think if we're taking kind of a case study look at it with people who follow the same kind of idea of ahimsa, of non-violence, and who both come from traditions which are at least promote vegetarianism.
Yeah.
I don't think that bears out. There is a lot of violence in some Hindu cultures where they practice
I was gonna say that
veganism or vegetarianism.
this is
and
a phenomenon you could. Sorry to interrupt you, Richard. I was
No,
just
go on.
commenting. Yeah, this is a phenomenon. Ostensibly, you should be able to measure in some capacity, right? Are the most vegan societies the less violent? Can you track that in a metrics kind of way? Like I would think of, okay, well, there's no 100% vegan or vegetarian societies, but there's certainly more than others. I'm thinking maybe India, maybe other Southeastern Asian nations probably do that more. Are they more or less violent? It also depends on how you define violence as well. The only thing I know for certain that can level out structural violence is the alleviation of poverty from my understanding. I'm not sure if veganism has that same effect. That would be interesting to study though. Probably really hard to do. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts here. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Richard. But
no, I think I agree, and I agree with you
yeah.
entirely on the poverty front as well.
Yeah.
I just think for me personally, I don't know if one's been done. I'll have to look into it. But I would love to see a study on ahimsa as a concept and the different cultures and places that practice it. Look at whether they are largely vegetarian or vegan, whether they are largely meat eaters, and look at corresponding kind of crime figures. I suppose is the only way you could do it. But
I don't know.
It's a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to collate that data and to decide where outside factors are coming in and where they're not. Certainly an interesting concept. And I think it's definitely a watch this space idea. It's a very good idea, I think, to kind of look into that further.
Julie, any other thoughts?
Yeah. No, he made a really good point about data and stuff like that. I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about the violence in general, just against people. So yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you from a philosophical perspective, right, Julie? Which is like, yeah, I want to alleviate violence against animals, and right. So I think that if you're going to be vegan, you're going to be less violent, but like you may be less violent in that one category. It may mean that you struggle with violence in other ways. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
True.
Also, other
Well, I have
other vegans too.
thoughts.
Yeah, another thing to point out too,
Yeah.
Julie, is that I assume you're the same in my position, where you're a vegan for philosophical reasons. But not everybody who's vegan is vegan for philosophical reasons. Some of them are vegan because
Yeah, that's
for health reasons. Some of them are vegan for, other kinds of things, and so they may still have this kind of maybe problematic view towards animals or problematic view towards other people that doesn't get solved because
yeah.
that they're vegan. It's just because, oh, I'm vegan because I want to look fit and have this nutritional thing. Also, I think people of other races are inferior to me or something, right? Like that could still happen. There's nothing that says that that's not coherent or inconsistent, unfortunately. So
Oh,
yeah,
for
something to
sure.
think about there. But I like your call, Julie. It was a good call. Good call. Richard
Yeah.
or Julie, any other thoughts?
No, I agree. I think it was a good call. It was a great question, and certainly one. I think if this was a scientific paper, it would have a section at the end called discussion, where you kind of talk about how you can take it further and take the idea further and look at it into more detail.
Yeah.
Definitely a good call. Definitely an interesting subject to kind of that needs further development and looking at.
I like it. I like it. We do
Yeah,
have
kind
some
of
other
like
calls.
the psychology of people, you know what I mean? Just their mindset.
Yeah.
But thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much, Julie. Have a great rest of your day. And now we have more calls in the queue that want to talk about veganism. So I knew, we started the firestorm here today, Richard. Yeah, it's happening. So we will talk more about it in just a second. But before we do, there's a super chat we got to read. It's from Ben9, which is a great name. I don't know if that's a Ben 10 reference and you're just Ben 9, or if just Ben 9 is like a different thing, or like B9 maybe, like benign. I just like it. Ben9, who gave $10, he says, 12-step programs are definitely a Christian movement and can be difficult to get off merry-go-rounds, but it is possible to experience sobriety without AHP. I think, I don't have any personal experience with those kinds of programs. I only know from people who have talked about this kinds of stuff, and I know that they're 12-step programs in general are problematic because they're motivated by religious institutions a lot of times and don't maybe don't display the same efficacy as other kinds of programs. Maybe you could speak to this more, Richard, but I can only know what I've been told about it.
Yeah, I've not experienced them personally. From what I know about them, they are very much, higher power motivated, and certain ones, the famous ones, let's not advertise them, but the famous
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
are very much Christian, higher power motivated.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we have to go down that route of having some kind of deity or supernatural element in it, because you could call motivation a higher power in that context and have different things to motivate you in that aspect.
Yeah.
And I think, whether that's, whatever, lots of examples. If you've got children, seeing your children and providing a good life for your children again could be considered a higher power. So I don't know why we have to elevate it to some kind of supernatural element. Motivation comes in many, many different forms.
Yeah, Daryl Ray spoke to me about this actually on Truth Wanted a few weeks back. He makes the case that a lot of 12-step programs just kind of offer themselves to local communities as sometimes even just for free in order to sort of be in compliance with some regulatory laws in the United States about offers and programs offered to people in prison populations and other sorts of things like that. So there is a case to be made that a lot of these programs exist, and the reason why they're so popular isn't because they're good. It's just because it's like a cheap option, basically, for people to take, and doesn't actually have to do with their efficacy, unfortunately. This is the case that Daryl Ray makes, and who knows much more about the subject than I do. So you should check out that episode of him where he talks about it more, if you're interested. But hey, there's some more folks who want to talk to us now, Richard, and let's go ahead and talk to them now. I'll talk about more announcement stuff later, since we just got into a super chat there. Yeah, let's keep going on this. I just because there's a couple people that want to talk to us about it. We are going to keep talking about it. Brandon is calling in from Florida. They have a question for you, Richard. Brandon, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Of course,
anytime.
Of course. You're here to question Richard, right? What do you got?
Yeah, so I actually run the official veganism channel of YouTube, and so I'm atheist just like you guys. And as I've been exploring this path of trying to convert people to veganism, I've noticed definitely a parallel between believers and meat eaters. Whereas people kind of, they have like an excuse as to, let's say, why they eat animals. And as soon as I disassemble that excuse, then they're kind of trying to come up with their next excuse. As soon as I dismantle that excuse, they're trying to come up with their next excuse. Because I'm finding like it's something that for whatever reason, they want to do it. Like they want to harm cute, defenseless little creatures, even though like you could get all the same taste pleasure from plants. It's healthier and nobody has to die. So now that I've kind of noticed that parallel, kind of brings me to everybody that I know is an atheist. I'm really puzzled because I feel like there's a certain level of hypocrisy there, where if somebody's an atheist and they want somebody else to question their beliefs and their reality and look at what's the morally correct thing to do and whatnot, I just question how could somebody understand all of this and still choose to harm animals unnecessarily? It's basically my question.
Do you know the difference between atheism and skepticism?
Do I know the difference between the two? Is that what you said?
Yeah, do you know the difference between atheism and skepticism?
I mean, I feel like they're one and the same, aren't they? I mean, atheists, they're not really saying there isn't a God. They're just saying they don't.
Atheism is an answer to a single question, and it's about the belief in God. That's it. Skepticism is about...
I don't know about that, Richard. I mean, there's people who call themselves skeptics about lots of things. I don't know if that has to just be God.
Not atheism, I said, not skepticism.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said skepticism. Okay,
no, atheism is an answer to a single question. Skepticism is applying kind of skepticism to across the board, not just to the God question. I noticed in your introduction there to when you were talking about trying to to kind of convince people that they should be vegan, you did a lot of things that I wouldn't call skeptical. You poisoned the well a little bit by calling animals, you argued from emotion by calling animals cute. You poisoned the well a little bit by, I forgot what you did, but you did poison the well, but I forgot the specific example now of how you did it. If you want to kind of repeat the argument and I'll try and pick it up again.
Okay, sure.
Chris is just wondering why you're not vegan.
Me,
yeah.
Well,
sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Onto that.
Oh. Hey, Brandon, if you are on speaker, we need you to go ahead and change that. I'm going to mute you real quick while you fix that, because I think your audio just pooped out there. Sorry, I was interrupting there, and also I'm playing. I feel like I have to play devil's advocate with you, Richard, when we have these conversations.
No, but I repeated last week. I think it's fine. No,
while we're waiting for Brandon to fix that, I'll tell you this. I think you can make comparisons to meat eaters and religious people, but you can also make comparisons to vegans and religious people. You can make comparisons to religious people to like anything. I understand why that is an analogy that could be used, and I have had frustrating conversations with people who are advocately anti-vegan, like who are adamantly anti-vegan, right? Who really reject that. And yeah, I could definitely make some comparisons there, but in this context, it can be a little slippery. It can be a little mushy. I don't know. Richard, I don't know why fully what stances you have. I do know that you at least hello, you're talking to me about it, but also you're willing to talk to callers about it. So I will grant you that. Okay, like that's a thing most people will not do. But I am curious to see if we could get to the heart of that a little bit more. Let's see if Brandon's audio is a little bit better. Brandon, I'm unmuting you now. If you could talk for a second, let's see if we can hear you better.
Hey, sorry about that. How are you there?
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead.
Where did you guys lose me at? What was the last thing you heard me say?
Pretty much lost you at everything, honestly, if you want to start over.
Okay. So I was saying that for me, if I see like a wasp what I would consider a not cute living being. If I see a wasp on my porch, I would go out there and save its life, because as an atheist, I'm under the understanding that everybody, whether you're an ant, a wasp, a cow, pig, or chicken, everyone only gets one life, as far as we know. So how can I rob that being of its one and only life for my own selfish reasons? Like, even if you told me beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would live a shorter life being vegan, I would still choose to do this just because I feel it's the morally correct thing to do. How can I, for all the things that would arrive somebody to be atheist, they have to be humble. They have to, really look at themselves and be brave and say they may not know everything, or they might have to accept certain things that are uncomfortable. So I feel like if somebody is willing to go through all of those mental barriers and arrive at that conclusion, that that same level of reasoning would draw them to be vegan as well. So I'm curious, Richard, like why aren't you vegan?
I'm not vegan because I don't see any moral imperative to being vegan. Regarding the example of harming wasps, I would also go and save the life of a wasp. And you know what I'd also go and save the life of, if I saw it in distress and peril, is a cow or a pig or a chicken. I would, if I saw a cow wrapped up in barbed wire, I wouldn't say, I am a meat eater, I eat meat, I eat beef especially, so I am going to go and I'm going to let that die because I don't care about the well-being of that individual creature. I wouldn't do that. I would do the best I could to try and save that particular animal's life in that circumstance. We have questions like this. We had one on the call last week where someone said, why wouldn't you just go and punch a dog? It's not comparable. I don't walk around punching things, intentionally causing physical harm to things for no reason whatsoever. I disagree with a lot of the farming processes. I know a lot of vegans don't like that. They think that's an excuse. I think we had an extensive after show on the ACD Discord last week. We went to, I think, almost to the time where the next show began, and on talking on this issue. And my stance is that we would have a much better kind of overall well-being for animals if vegans and meat eaters worked together to change farming methods, to change the way we farm, to change the way we treat animals while they're being farmed. I think it would cause it would make the price of meat go up. It would make the consumption of meat go down. I'll just finish my thought and then I'll let you jump in. I think it would make the price of meat go up. I think it would make the cost of meat come down. I think it would make the health of people eating meat better overall. And I think all of those things are good things. But that doesn't, to me, say that we must therefore all become vegan.
Well, my first point I would say is if you replace any of those words, cow, pig, chicken, fish, wasp, if you replace it with human, I'm guessing
Why?
it would probably instantly.
Why?
Well, I'm saying, like, why would we change the word to human? Well, just to show, I want to see if you're consistent. Like, because I'm thinking you would change everything you just said.
Why is it inconsistent?
Human.
Why is it inconsistent?
Well, it's kind of like if somebody said a black life is worth less than a white life, right? If you're saying an animal life is worth less.
No, it's not like that, because black people and white people are human beings. And I appreciate human beings, and I can communicate with them. And for the most part, there are exceptions, but I can communicate with human beings on the same level that I myself communicate. I can't do that with other animals. That doesn't mean I don't care about the welfare or well-being of animals while they are alive. I don't want to see undue suffering. And that, to me, is not a reason to become vegan.
Because you have a problem with them suffering. I think the reason you have a problem with them suffering is because you recognize that any level of suffering is wrong and you want to minimize it. So if we can minimize it altogether and just cause no suffering at all, why not pick that option?
Why would we cause no suffering at all?
Well,
what would happen to the animals that and I'm not talking about I'm not just throwing the short term, let's get rid of all the farm animal. What would we do if we all became vegan tomorrow? Argument. I'm not going down that kind of route, although that is a valid argument in itself, I think. But let's say that if we're talking about reduction of suffering, let's take pigs as an example. If the vegan argument is that we should reduce suffering, and we can, we've got wild pigs, we've got farmed pigs. Now, let's say if we stop farming pigs, the number of wild pigs would go up. Because those, unless we are just advocating killing all of those animals off. Now, which has less suffering? Let's say we have a kind of ideal farm which minimizes suffering as much as we can possibly. And I know we don't have that, and that's why I think we should work together to kind of achieve those things. But let's say that we do have that, and then we have a pig in the wild. Which one of those two things has less suffering, do you think? One with shelter, one with access to medicine before it's killed for food, one that's had access to medicine, one that's got shelter, one that's, is cared for, or the one that's left in the wild, and even at the point of death, where if it's one in the wild and it's getting ripped apart by a predator, or the one that is, quickly killed for meat consumption. If we're using suffering as an argument, which one of those has less suffering?
Okay, I have several things to say to your point. Well, first, why you said if it was wild versus kept in captivity. For me, I think if everybody kind of treated it with the same outlook that I have, I mean, we could still keep things in captivity and protect them without killing them is one option. I think
that would be ideal, but I think if we're talking realistically, that's not going to happen. If we're going to keep the kind of creatures alive, it still takes the land that they're fed on. It still takes the kind of the care. It costs money, and unless there's an industry which is willing to do that for profit at the end of the day, then that's going to fall down onto charitable organizations. And that, I think, is an unrealistic standard to say, well, all these animals, well, we can just care for them all. Well, we can just care for them without killing them. Well, I don't think that would realistically happen.
I caught a little bit of the previous call, and it sounded like, I believe, Dan, you were saying that, there are vegans that are violent and those that are not. I would argue that is more plant-based, people who don't eat animals for health reasons and whatnot. Because the vegans, the whole philosophy behind veganism is causing the least amount of harm possible. So whatever the answer ends up being, if everyone tomorrow stopped eating animals, you're saying, what would we do with all these animals? Are they going to be killed?
That's not what I said. I said that was one argument you could use, but that's not the argument I was using. I was giving you a specific example of a creature in the wild. Right. And I've noticed how you've actually avoided answering this to go on to something else. Because my specific question was, if we had a creature in the wild and one that was on a humane farm up until the point of death, which one suffers less? Was the specific question I asked you. And I noticed how you've strategically avoided answering that question to give a different scenario.
Okay. Well, let me answer your question. I think up until the point that they're killed, obviously the one kept in captivity would have potentially maybe a better life. However,
why potentially maybe, and why only up until the point of death?
Well, let me answer. Let me please, let me get the answer out. So, for example, if I ever capture like a spider, I caught one the other day that was in the airport, for sure going to die. So I was like, okay, I'm going to capture this, and then I'm going to take it home and release it. So when I got home, I was at the woods. I was like, I could keep this spider, and it would probably live a longer, safer life. Rather, it might get eaten in 5 minutes after I release it. But then I put myself in the shoes of the spider, and I want to be free. I'd say let the spider take its chances. That like whether it gets eaten or not, maybe that's more nature versus if it's just kept as a slave or kept, in a plastic bottle for the rest of its life. That's what
absolutely I think, amazing. And has absolutely nothing to do with the specific question I asked you, which would suffer less. Because the argument you gave initially was one of suffering. So I'm asking you a question about suffering.
Well,
which would suffer less?
If you let me get the answer out.
No, I'm trying to, but you keep changing you keep trying to change the question that I'm asking you to relate to something else. If we're talking about suffering, which is what you were talking about, which one suffers less?
I think that me personally, I don't know if I have that answer, but whoever decides that, if they came in it with the philosophy of love.
Do you know what I think, sir? I think it's difficult for you to answer because it demonstrates that the argument you're giving is a flawed argument. And at the start of this, you were talking about how meat eaters are akin to religious people with some of the arguments they give. And I noticed this is exactly you're doing the theist thing yourself. You're not answering a specific question given to you because it appears to be difficult for the thing that you want to try and demonstrate.
I'm not sure, Richard. I think he said he wasn't sure of the answer here. I want to make sure that Brandon gets his point across here too. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. If I could just, uninterrupted for just, I don't know, a minute or so, please. I think that the first point I would make is there's nothing we get from an animal that we don't get from a plant, nutrition-wise. It's just filtered through the animal. All the protein, all the nutrition comes from plants. So knowing that, there's really no reason to eat animals. And maybe you might say taste pleasure, but if I could convince you with some delicious vegan food that you could get all the taste pleasure you want from plants and the whole thing is completely unnecessary, then I think we would both be in the same place of why would we do this? We don't need it for taste or for nutrition. So having said that, the whole philosophy behind veganism is just showing love, treating everyone as an equal, whether you're an ant or a human or whatever. So to your specific question, well, I probably don't have the answer to that, but whoever comes up with the answer, I think if they approached it from the position of the most loving answer possible, that, you know, if we replace the word pig with human, I think it's very easy to see where I'm coming from. If I said, if it was a human, would you want to be farmed and killed? No matter what life you got, at some point you'd say, I don't want to be killed. I'd rather take my chances.
I'm almost certain I've already answered this question. And did you catch last week's show at all, Brandon, when we kind of had the vegan conversation on that?
Well, I haven't, and I'm sure you probably have answered it. I was just thinking, as I said earlier, that I run the official Veganism channel, and I send all my followers to your guys' channel. So I just wanted to hear them say what I say to you guys and what you guys say back. I think would be interesting for my audience. And I'll definitely check up on that previous video after this phone call.
Yeah, I think we should, because I touched on, just quickly before you go, I think I touched on the point on that last channel when you said, you know, you want to cause, you know, as little harm as possible to things. You know, I touched, and this is one of the major things which stops me thinking that veganism is a moral imperative. I've no problem with people being vegan. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people who say you shouldn't be vegan. I'm not like that. I have no problem whatsoever with people who are vegan. I think when it comes to this issue
is almost more, I feel like this is more important than almost as somebody a believer or an atheist, because that's kind of like all in your mind. But these are the actions that come as a result of what somebody believes, and it's literally a matter of life and death. If somebody believes that the Bible told them it's okay to have a literal animal holocaust, then that's what they're going to do. So I think that their actions are more important than their beliefs. And so I know you're already talking about.
I think Brandon beliefs inform actions, and this is why I advocate for. I don't believe that we should unduly go out causing harm to things for no reason. This is why I think vegans and non-vegans should work together. I think the bigger question is not whether someone is vegan or non-vegan, but I think the bigger question is, why the fuck do we allow current farming methods the way they are? And I think we'd have far more impact if we worked together. I think we'd have far more impact if we worked together as vegans and non-vegans to try and change that than if we spent time arguing about whether you should be vegan or not.
I think the moment you say that one life is more valuable than another in any context, that leads to factory farming. So the first way to undo this whole system.
Brandon, do you have children, sir?
I don't.
I do. And I can tell you absolutely that I view one life more important than another, because if anybody attempted to harm my children, that person would be in a far worse condition because of my actions than and
What
I'm
is
not
it? I'm just
advocating
saying, generally
violence here,
speaking, not
but I
not like a
see
specific
that I
person,
see,
not
and I
specific,
believe
but
you do too.
generally speaking.
I think if you have family, I have a dog who lives in our house, and it's safe. Everybody, I know last week we were talking about eating dog
Yeah.
meat. He is safe. I value that dog's life more than I value someone else's dog's life because he's part of my close circle. And I think we all have that, whether we're vegan or
Okay.
not.
Well, hang on. Well, wait a minute. We do need to end this because we're 15 minutes in. But I want to ask one question for you, Richard. You said that you would eat dog meat, but you also said that you wouldn't let anybody harm your dog. So, is there any inconsistency there? What if we found a dog on the street? Why does the dog on the street? Why is it okay for me to eat that dog, but not the dog that is in your close
I
circle?
don't think in the society in which we live, it is okay to do that. I was talking
But
about
you said you
principles
would
of
eat
things.
dog meat though.
Yeah,
You
I
said
would
if
eat
you had
dog
the
meat.
option.
If we had a society where we ate dogs, and they were farmed to a standard where they were, because in societies where they do eat dogs, they're not particularly
Yeah.
cared for. In principle, I have no problem with eating dog meat. This was
So you're
a
saying
question
it
about.
only matters if it's right or wrong to eat a dog if society says it's okay?
Yeah, thank
No,
you.
I'm saying
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I'm saying it matters to eat it because we can't just simply go against the laws of our land for what we consider is acceptable to do.
Yeah, we can. We do it all the time. What do you
Somebody
mean?
was
I would if it was the law of the land for me to report Jewish people to the Nazi government, I wouldn't do it. What do you mean, Richard? The law of the land doesn't determine what's right or wrong. Come on now.
Thank you.
What if it was state mandated Christianity? We have to go to church every Sunday. If we don't do it,
But
we go to jail.
we could still fight against it without having to
right.
kind of
But the point,
appeal to it straight away.
But the point is social norms, right, don't determine necessarily what's right or wrong, right? Just because it's the law of the land.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Anyway.
But I don't on the issue of eat. But that's not what we're talking about. The issue of eating meat, and the kind of conversation last week was about carnism, and the reason that came up was because the kind of definition of carnism is that they would treat some creatures differently to others depending on the status. And the reason I said that was because I don't actually, in principle, I have no problem with eating things that we would classify as pets. In principle,
human? Would you
no, I
eat
wouldn't
human
eat
if that was
human.
a social norm?
Well, not unless because I've already answered this question. I don't know why we have to go back there, because humans I can relate to on a different level. They are part of my own species.
Yeah. I think this is an ongoing conversation. We're over 15 minutes on this call. We have to let it go. Brandon, I appreciate you calling in.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thanks
guys
so much
for
for
what
that.
you both do. Thank you so much.
No problem, Brandon.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good one. This is an ongoing topic here, Richard. We're whittling you away. We're slowly converting you to the high church of veganism, and that is the agenda. It's written out. Yeah, I don't care. I'm not really tied into the vegan community, actually. It's very fun. I didn't realize there are other channels sending people to the show. That's really funny.
Yeah, I just want to say before we move on to further announcements and things, I'm
Yeah.
going to repeat what I said at the end of last week's show. There are lots of people who complain about the vegan calls coming in, or even the philosophy calls that come in. If you don't want to hear them, get your religious friends to phone in, because we're going to field those calls if they come in. If you want to hear questions about God and questions about religion, get the people you know who are religious and who are believers in God to call in. Don't just sit there complaining that we take vegan calls, because it's not going to stop us taking vegan calls. Even though I'm on the other side of it,
I know
it's not going to stop us.
Here's the other thing too. It's entertaining for me. One, because of the very unique position I sit in, but also because it's different from the other kind of stuff we usually talk about on here. And I like seeing it. I like it, even if it's messy. It's pretty funny for me. I'm not gonna lie. It is for my personal satisfaction a little bit, and I will take advantage of that while I'm host. So anyway, Richard, thanks for being a good sport. And moving on, let's get a couple announcements out of the way, and we might have some theist calls here in just a second. Real quick though. The ACA does want you to know what is happening in the community, and for that, there is an updated website. It's www.atheist-community.org, where you can learn about the organization itself, its policies, and what you can do to get involved. And we also want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked, what you thought was effective, and more importantly, what you thought we could do better, specifically what Richard can do better now that he's producer of Talk Heathen. So go complain to Richard now, and you can do that if you email tv@atheist-community.org and let us know, or let me know how much I suck as a host, or if I'm good, whatever you want to tell us there. That's the email address to do it. And we're past the hour here, so we need to get to some of those top 5 patron announcements. So Richard, if you want to get that list set up, but while you're getting that up, I'm going to say, if you happen to be in the Austin area next week on the 27th, the Back Cruise weekend, we are also doing a live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. It's going to be a 3-host show for Talk Heathen and a 3-host show for Atheist Experience. We got Forrest Valakai, J Mike, and Jamie Forbes next week, aka Blind Limey, and also Johnny P. Angel, Forrest Valakai, and J Mike on Atheist Experience. It is a free event, of course. Doors open at noon, so check it out. You got that list of top 5 patrons, Richard?
Absolutely. Number 1 is Dingleberry Jackson. Number 2 is Dion Lachey, who is incidentally a new patron. So it's great to see you too.
New patron
can jump
got
on
up
that
to
list.
the top 5.
Absolutely. Number 3 is
competition.
one of my favorite. Oops, all singularity. Number 4, Davor Valgin. And number 5, the old favorite, Kalevi Helvete. And an honorable mention this week to JP Young. Thank you all for your patronage. We really, really do appreciate it. And while we're on the subject, super chats, you can send super chats. We do have a super chat from Twinkle Toes for £10, which suggests to me that they are in my neck of the woods. And they ask, I'm reading this out because they ask Dan, what were your beliefs and what is your story on how you became an atheist? Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like I've told this story a million times, so I will give you a truncated version and tell you where you can find out more. But in short, I was most often known for having a conversation of myself as a Christian with Anthony Magnabosco in the street epistemology community. And so that was kind of a thing for a while. There's a 30-minute conversation of me as a Christian. If you want to see that, it's on YouTube. That wasn't the reason why I became an atheist. It was, I call it a stepping stone in my path. I mean, I grew up as a Christian, and I talk about this more in the sequel video to that, which is also on Anthony's channel. But basically, the short version is I grew up as a Christian, was very much involved in the Christian community. And eventually, when I found that I couldn't actually demonstrate how my beliefs could be true, or at least I couldn't demonstrate them to be true more so than really any other religious claims, I realized it wasn't right for me to hold on to them because I just wanted to believe things that were true. So I eventually discarded those beliefs and got more involved in the atheist community. And hey, eventually I showed up here one day. So that's pretty cool. But it's a story you can check out again on Anthony Magnabosco's channel. There's a first video there, and there's a second video there where I go in depth more about my story. And I've been interviewed on a couple different channels as well. Sidney Davis Jr., who was on the show recently, also interviewed me on her podcast. So check that out as well if you want a more recent coverage, I guess, from like a few months ago, I think is when I did that. So yeah, check that out. Also, we just got another super chat here, so I'll go ahead and read it. It's from Robin Webster, who gave $5, who says, what would a vegan diet mean in regards to our development of bigger brains by eating and cooking meat? Good job with callers. And it's a great point. So it's been often speculated by anthropologists that one of the reasons why we have bigger brains is because of our ability to eat cooked foods. Now, this isn't a definitive answer as to why we have larger brains. It is one of many competing theories. However, it has a lot of traction. Truth is, we don't know for sure. The thing is, if we can synthesize proteins in the same level that we can get from like cooked meat and cooked products, I really don't see this being like a huge problem. And also, we're talking about in evolutionary terms, which matter for like millions of years sometimes. So it really just kind of depends. To me, this is like a very sci-fi hypothetical space question, which maybe that's what you were getting at, Robert. I don't know, but it's not a big concern for me if that's what you were interested in. I mean, it could have an effect, but really, how could we really know? I mean, we don't even know what our current diets do to us. We have a very limited understanding of nutritional science as it is. I don't know if we can make far-flung predictions like that in the future. Maybe some people think we can, but I'm not aware of a science that robust that can do that. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Richard, but yeah, that's my take. Oh, you're muted right now, Richard. Just FYI.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I actually agree with Dan on that. I think you know, if that's the case, you know, our bigger brain development came from eating meat. That has nothing at all to do with whether we choose to be vegan now or not. You know, that we've already got those bigger brains. What would it have an effect going forward? We don't know. You know, we'd have to do the research. We'd have to do the research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something which neither of us are capable of doing.
No,
I'll tell you
not
that.
at all. Not at all.
But let's try to get at least one more caller. We'll see if we can take any more for today. We're talking to Herbert, who is calling in from Arkansas. Herbert, who says we are being deceived by the devil. Herbert, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Hi. Yeah, we definitely are being deceived by the devil. And of course, all religions will tell you about that. But the deception is very simple, and it's right in our faces, and no one seems to see it. The big lie is about the nature of our reality and the nature of our realm and our planet and the solar system, and of who created what. And basically that's being perpetuated by NASA and by all of the space programs that are absolutely lying to us.
How are they now? I take it you have definitive evidence that this is the case then?
I don't know, I guess how you define definitive evidence.
Well, why do you think?
You seem quite sure about it. So
yeah, what's your reasoning?
If you're saying that this is absolutely the case, I'm sure you've got something that is it just a hunch you've got? Do you have documents demonstrating that NASA are lying to us? What level of evidence is it that persuades you that this is true?
Well, we all live in a crater on the moon.
Okay, that has absolutely nothing to do with the question I've just asked you, sir. I feel like I'm being avoided. People are avoiding my questions tonight, and it's jolly frustrating. What level of evidence, sir, do you have that NASA are lying to us? Is it a hunch you have got? Do you have some undisclosed, some documents that have been disclosed to yourself by NASA personnel? Have you seen documents? Have you spoken to people from NASA who've told you that this is the case?
No, I have a logical mind that can see the truth.
That's cool.
So
I have a logical mind and can see the truth too, and I think NASA's being totally honest. So now what?
Well, we have. I mean, first of all, you're asking me for proof of something that I haven't even really explained what's going on here.
You said NASA was lying to us.
For evidence of the claim that you made, which was that NASA was lying to us.
Yeah,
I want to deal with that specific.
Can you see the moon?
Yes.
Can you see the moon?
What has that got to do with NASA lying to us?
Wait. Let him cook. Let him cook, Richard. Yeah, I can see the moon. What's up?
Have you ever looked at the moon through a telescope or footage of a moon through the telescope?
Yeah, I've done both.
Yeah, and you notice how everything looks wavy and all the stars look wavy. Everything looks like it's watery.
No.
Because it's only reflections. It's reflections off of
I don't think it looks watery.
But Dan said no. Dan said no to your answer, and then you said, well, that's because. Well, Dan doesn't agree with you.
When I go outside and I look at the moon and I turn into a werewolf during the full moon, I don't see any water on the moon. I don't think it's watery. It doesn't look watery to me.
So you're not even listening.
I am listening. You said it looks watery. I say I don't think it looks watery. You say it's wavy.
Like a reflection off of water. Yeah, wavy.
No, it doesn't. Why do you say that?
You've never seen close-ups of stars How they look like water flowing?
No, I don't think they do. I mean, I don't think they look like water. I think they look like gases, you know?
Yeah, they are gases.
Okay,
so-
gases aren't water. I mean, they're not like liquid water anyway. I mean, they could be water in liquid in gas form, but
Well, why don't you guys let me tell you what I'm trying to say before you start asking me for proof of what I'm trying to say?
Because the
wait,
thing
no,
is,
I
we don't just
disagree.
we don't just let people come on here and just talk and talk and talk and talk. This is about having conversations about beliefs and why
Yeah,
people
well,
believe
still-
things. It's not simply about someone coming out and
Well, I mean, I can't
spewing
just make-
multiple things. You made a claim about NASA lying. I still want to. It seems like your establishment of
and
that
you're not
claim
even
is
concerned about
simply,
what
is
NASA's lying
simply,
about.
sir, is simply that it feels that way to you. Now, I would be if you demonstrated absolutely that NASA was lying, then I would be very interested in what NASA was lying about. See, this I once did a comparison between people who believe in conspiracy theories about NASA, kind of similar to you, that have no evidence behind them, and actual conspiracies within NASA that have been demonstrated. And one of them was when the Challenger, then an actual conspiracy that happened with NASA was when the Challenger spacecraft exploded, and there was an investigation into it, and it turned out that NASA knew about the fault that was present in the O-rings during that launch, that they weren't stable at when it got to a certain low temperature. They knew about this, and it was kind of swept under the carpet during the investigation. That is a genuine conspiracy. We have evidence of it. We have a paper trail of it. We have witness testimony about it, and it was demonstrated to be the case. That is how you demonstrate that a conspiracy is taking place. Just simply saying, well, it kind of doesn't really feel right to me, is not evidence that a conspiracy is taking place. You're just making the statement that a conspiracy is taking place. Now, if you could demonstrate that a conspiracy was actually taking place, I, myself, and I'm absolutely sure that Dan would also be very, very, very interested in what that conspiracy was. But first, we need to know that a conspiracy is actually taking place, because otherwise it's just a statement.
You have no idea what I'm trying to tell you because you're asking for proof before I even can explain what I'm trying to say.
You said the moon isn't real. You said it's a reflection.
No, I did not. I did not say the moon is not real.
Okay,
The
then what
moon
is the
a
moon? What?
reflection of the giant planet. The reflection of the giant planet that all other planets and stars exist on. And we are seeing reflections off of our atmosphere and off of other atmospheres that are outside of it. There's several plasma layers, scientifically proven, that go around our solar system, the sun, the planets. We are seeing luminaries that are just reflections of the sun.
I disagree with you.
The reason
No, I think he's right. Wait, no, Richard, he's right. No, he's right. He's 100% right. No, I'm in agreement. I think it's all
Okay.
reflections.
Okay.
Herbert, why do you think that?
Reflections of
Hey,
reflections of reflections.
the deception of the devil is that we are made to believe that we are floating out in some space all crazy like, and millions of miles an hour, whatever, however you want to call it. But
who is the devil,
is
and why would
those
that
are-
make it? What would be his advantage in deceiving us over such a thing?
there's a giant planet out there full of resources and
Who is
other
the
realms,
devil?
other places.
Wait, hold on. Wait, I want to. we gotta go deeper, Richard. I gotta know this. So there's a planet.
Dan is the host of Truth Wanted, caller. But in case you don't know, he talks about this stuff a lot.
Like, this is my bread and butter. All right, I gotta know. So there's a planet and its reflection is what we see on the moon. That right? Our image of the moon is a reflection. No?
Yeah, the
Okay,
image
explain
of
to
the
me your
moon is a
cosmology.
reflection of the entire planet. And on that planet, everything, all the other planets and stars exist, satellites and all that crap.
So the moon is a reflection. It's not there in a material form. Right. It's a reflection. Okay. So what's reflecting it? Like
but it's underneath us. We're on top of it. We're standing on it. We live on the moon. It is a reflection of the planet that we are on.
Oh, okay. So the moon is a reflection of our planet.
But our planet is 1,100 times bigger than what we're told Earth is.
See, Richard, this is some deep info that you just got. I got to learn from this. Okay, wait. So we're on a planet and it's big, really big, and the moon is a reflection of that. So like, what is the moon just like a giant mirror in the sky? How does that work?
No, the plasma of our atmosphere, which is made of gases which are compressed into liquid, is reflective just like water. And so some of the light goes through and goes to the next layers and reflects off of that too. It's like having two-way mirrors or two translucent kind of halfway reflective surfaces bouncing the same light back and forth to each other. Some light goes through, some light comes back. And the stuff that goes through makes it look like that there's a whole bunch of these things out there. But what we're actually seeing is Earth has its atmosphere. We're seeing other realms, other places on the moon that have their atmospheres too. And we see that shining and we think that's a star, but that's actually just another realm, another planet, like get it, the word, it's a small part of the plane.
Okay. So wait, but the moon in the sky at least moves, right? Same thing with the stars. Stars aren't in the same location every time. But
right, because
how could that be
oscillating? But they do stay in the same position, relatively, because of astronomy, astrology, all that stuff. It doesn't change. It's cycles.
We know that because of astronomy.
So it's
right. Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm listening. Okay, now see, now we have a fuller picture of your worldview here, Herbert. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's get to the nitty gritty here. Okay, Richard wants to know a couple of things. He wants to know about the devil. He wants to know about the deception. Should we start with that, Richard, or you want to go a different way? What do you think?
Who is the devil? I'm still interested in what this evidence is.
The devil is the God of the Bible. The devil is the
God of the Bible. We had a call about this last week as well.
God of the Bible is deceiving us through NASA and presumably other spacefaring agencies.
Everywhere, yes, all of them.
Why should we care what the Bible says?
Just like anything else, it has some truth in it.
Well, there are certain things that have some truth in it that aren't all true, right?
Definitely not all true. It's absolutely misleading.
So why should we care about what it has to say then?
How do we know this part is a true part? What if it's a fake part?
What part are you talking about?
Just any part of the Bible, right? How do we know the true parts from the Bible from the not true parts of the Bible?
I wouldn't know.
Well, you do think some of it's true, right? So you must have a method.
Well, I mean, some of the historical accounts are true.
Okay.
I think they're just misinterpreted. Just like mythology is true.
Okay.
And it's just discounted as being incredible and not real.
So some historical accounts of the Bible
tell you.
Yeah, there could be some exaggeration and stuff, right? In like mythology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm following you there.
How do we decide which is the right interpretation?
Right. In other words, what if what you're saying right now, this entire cosmology, like, You're not using the Bible for answers?
No, I'm not looking to the Bible for answers. No, I'm looking
Okay.
around at the world.
But what do you mean looking around at the world? Because when I look around at the world, I do not see that the moon is a reflection of our planet alongside all the other stars. Like, I'm looking around the world and I don't see that. So how are you seeing that? What method are you using to come to that conclusion?
Because it makes everything else make sense.
To be honest, it makes things make less sense. I don't think it makes more sense. Like you're telling me that everybody within every single spacefaring, every single aerospace engineering firm, every single one, the ones that don't even go to space, the ones that just work ground control.
They do not know. Everybody does not know. Everybody does not know.
Just the
ones
elites
at the top.
and you.
The elites know. Elon Musk knows. Jeff Bezos knows. They are shipping products out to the people and other entities outside of our crater. Those giant satellites that we see during the daytime, those are just man-made realms that are just outside of our crater.
Herbert, you're saying Amazon's doing space deliveries? That's crazy. Wait, they can't.
So is Elon Musk.
They're late on my overnight. You're telling me they can go to space? That's crazy, dude. That's wild.
They have canisters that. Well, why else would they have fuel cells that don't get returned? Because they're just cargo, and those spaceships are just full of helium.
Helium.
There's no way if the cosmology, if the stars were like they said they were, and the moon was that far away, we'd never be able to get there. Ever.
Oh. What are they delivering to what do they got? Like, what
are people
where is
doing?
this?
I mean, there's people out there.
I don't know. Dildos, phones, cables. What is it?
Yeah. Why do you? Yeah, exactly. Why does Elon Musk think that he can make a phone that works on Mars? Because Mars isn't that far away. And I've seen.
No, I just think Elon Musk thinks very highly of himself. I think that's why he thinks that. I think he thinks he could do it. I don't know if that's because Mars isn't that far away.
He can do it because Mars is a giant volcano, and there's a Soviet scientist that even said that Mars is the biggest volcano on the planet.
Herbert, you trolling? You're trolling, dude. Are you trolling, Herbert?
No, I'm not trolling at all. I'm not trolling at all. Not one bit.
Herbert, if we live on the moon, why don't we all wear silver costumes as predicted by the Mormon religion? I think that's a very important question that needs answering if we're going to talk about people living on the moon.
Yeah, the Mormons, Dan. Yeah, man, the Mormons, they're the weird ones.
Mormons, really. I don't know enough about them. I don't really know exactly what they believe.
Okay, so
what does that have to do with costumes? That's just weird. See, you guys are deflecting.
Where do we go from here? Like, how do we know that any of this is true? Like, can you give us one thing that we can look at that tells us, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense? Because all I'm hearing is speculation, right? It's easy to speculate. I can come up with my own cosmology. I can say the moon is literally made of cheese, and the fact that people say it's made of cheese as a joke is the government trying to dissuade us from the idea that the moon is actually made of cheese, right? I could say that. What's going to make that true? Right?
You could say anything, but it doesn't make any logical sense.
Well, I'll be honest, Herbert. I don't think what you're saying makes logical sense.
I think you have to.
Where do we go from there,
way, Herbert, to kind of get what you're saying to make logical sense? I mean, even if we just apply the principles of Occam's razor, the kind of idea with the least amount of assumptions is more likely to be correct. There are so many assumptions in what you're saying that you could build the largest mountain in the universe out of that.
Bubbles. I'm not assuming that there's plasma bubbles surrounding the planets in the solar system. That's scientific fact. I'm assuming that they would be compressed gases, which are reflective, similar to how water is. but that's a logical assumption that makes sense.
Why is it a logical assumption that makes sense?
Gas can be compressed into liquid, and liquids that are not dark are usually reflective, or even if they are dark.
Yeah.
Partially
But
reflective.
also, like, planets could be a thing. See what I mean? We have different ideas,
Planets
right?
are a thing.
So
You hear the
so-
word planet, a small part of the plane.
yeah, that's not what the etymology of that, I think. But here's my greater point, right, Herbert? We have different ideas. We can rank these ideas on what's more likely to be true versus what's less likely to be true, right? We can take a list of 1,000,000 ideas of what the universe is, and by and large, there's going to be some that are there's just no reason for us to think it could be true, but we don't really have any other reason besides it could be to think it. There's some that are going to be more likely to be true than others because of evidence, right? Because of the things we can observe.
But see, they tell you right in your face all day long. Why do you think Elon Musk's internet company is called Starlink? Because he is linking the stars that are outside of our planet, that are on the same planet, outside of our crater.
Or it could just be he's a sci-fi nerd and he thinks it sounds cool. You see what I mean? We have different ideas about what one could be true.
Yeah, you can play it all off like that, but when you really start to look at it as how it makes sense, why would he send his Tesla out there if he actually couldn't drive the stupid thing out there?
Well, wait,
I'm completely
lost now.
We can't. Nobody can drive cars out into space.
It makes sense.
Unless you're on the
I
jet
beg
stuff.
to differ. I have seen Fast and Furious. I disagree with you, Dan, completely.
Well, that is also a lie perpetuated by the government to make you think otherwise. But look, I think he put a rocket out into space with a Tesla car on it because he wanted to show off. That's why.
No,
right?
He needs his car out there. He needs a car out there so he can cruise around.
You think he literally needs a car? Herbert, you're trolling. You're trolling. There's a troll.
I am at this
troll.
point now.
I do not believe for a second you're being serious, Herbert.
No, I'm 100%
Come on, dude.
serious.
I have taken the executive decision to drop Herbert because I think that last remark
ridiculous. Come on. All right. Even if that's first of all, very unique cosmology. I'll give you points for creativity. But look, I could say 1,000,000 ideas, and none of them can be true because there's no reason for us to believe that it's true. I have yet to see a single thing that you said today where I should think it's true. If you're being genuine, which I'm suspicious of, but if there's a good chance you're being genuine, I really want you to think like, okay, how would you convince a guy like me, right? What's the best strategy to convince a guy like me? Is it just keep saying stuff because it makes sense to you? Or do you want to make appeals to my worldview, my understanding of science, my understanding of history, my understanding of politics in order to make something to be true? Because your worldview is so different from mine. I have no idea how I could connect that. I have no idea how I could incorporate any of your ideas into what I already believe. So good luck to you on your quest for truth.
You have to demonstrate things, and this is, you often see this in conspiracy. And Dan, you know a lot about conspiracy theories, being the producer and the host of Deceitful. I do deal with it a little bit more than we do over here. But you know, the thing about conspiracy theories is you start with something like, and that's a popular one, NASA is lying to us. And rather than demonstrating that that's the case, because there is no reason in claims like that one that we've just heard. There is no way to demonstrate that's the case because it's not the case. So instead of simply demonstrating it is the case, which is what we should be doing if we're trying to convince someone it's the case, we have to start layering up. And what we get is a runaway train effect of more elaborate stories to try and justify the one before it. And that's how these kind of deep conspiracy theories start. And it's why they're so difficult to kind of, the people who are kind of caught up in them, it's why it's so difficult to get them out of them, because it's not just a case of saying, well, look at this one thing. There are layers built upon layers, each trying to justify the one before it.
Yep. 100%. I agree with that. And folks, we are getting to the end of the show. But if you like what you see and you want to keep watching, Richard and I are going to go on the after show for the Atheist Community of Austin Discord. You should go to that tiny.cc/ACD Discord. It's a fan run Discord server, and both of us are going to be hanging out today. You get a twofer. So check that out. And of course, check out the Nonprofits, which is going to be streaming right after this show is completed. Let me see if there's anything else I need to say here. Of course, you got to like and subscribe, right? That's standard fare. This is YouTube, after all, or you're listening to it in podcast form, in which case you can find other ways to support us. But hey, please like and subscribe. Please help us out with the Patreon. Consider becoming a member if you like. And go to the Facebook page if you want to talk to other folks who like this show and want to see more of this kind of content. So let's go to the crew cam, to the folks who help make this show happen every single week. We'll give them a shout out and a thank you for all of our support and for just putting up with us, quite frankly. Because, behind the scenes, I mean, Richard, not to talk shit, but kind of a diva. I mean, he's like, my lighting has to be perfect. He's like, I need the ACA to order 100 cans of Mountain Dew just so I can get through a show. I mean, ever since he became producer, he just thinks
I will not eat Blue Smarties. You can take all of them.
He won't eat
out.
Blue Smarties. That's the whole thing. Any crew cam today for the crew? There we go.
There we go. Look at
Wonderful
those
crew.
lovely people.
Helping making this show happen every single week. And last but not least, we have to thank you guys, the viewers, because you are the ones who make the show happen. We couldn't have a show without you. Let's get some love rings out there for that if we can. Activating love ring lasers. See, this is actually how you know that we aren't real. Did you know that we're a reflection? Because look at these love rings. They come out in a circle, right? Kind of like if you threw a stone in a lake. So maybe we're actually the reflection, Richard. You ever think of that?
I'm convinced that's it. We are
I got more. I got more where that comes from. But we're out of time. We got to end the show today. Whether or not you believe, if you're an essential worker, we want to thank you. If you don't believe, this is your community. If you do believe, we don't hate you.
We are just not convinced.
Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.